I'm Dalton, 28, working as a financial analyst at Mitchell & Reed in downtown Chicago. I was on my lunch break skimming through client emails when my phone buzzed with a notification. The message from my father read, "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away from us forever." Below it, a small heart icon showed my sister Melissa had liked the text. My fingers trembled as I typed my response. "I'll remove my name from every loan tomorrow." By midnight, the family chat had exploded into a storm of capitalized yelling. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments, and if this resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories. I grew up in Oakwood Heights, a middle-class suburb about 30 minutes outside of Chicago. Our house was a modest two-story colonial, with faded blue shutters and a perpetually unfinished deck. My father, Richard, started building the summer I turned 10. He worked in construction management, overseeing residential developments, and brought that same demanding oversight home with him every night. My father ruled our household with an iron grip disguised as tough love. Every achievement was met with a dismissive nod and comments like, "That's expected, not exceptional." Every failure was dissected at the dinner table, served as a cold side dish alongside whatever my mother Eleanor had prepared. She was the perfect complement to his authoritarian style, passive-aggressive expert at weaponizing silence, and always backing up my father's harshest critiques with a soft, part calm, "Your father just wants what's best for you, Dalton." Then there was my sister Melissa, 3 years younger, and perpetually positioned as the golden child. While I struggled to meet impossible expectations, Melissa seemed to effortlessly receive praise for even her most basic accomplishments. When I brought home straight, as it was met with, "Well, that's your job as a student." When Melissa got a B+, there were celebrations and ice cream. The disparity wasn't subtle. Financial struggles were a constant undercurrent in our home. My father's paycheck stretched thin between mortgage payments, my mother's part-time retail job barely covered groceries, and there was never enough left for extras like new clothes or school trips. By 16, I was working after school at a local hardware store, turning over most of my paycheck to help with family expenses. I didn't question it then. That's what family did right. High school became my battlefield for parental approval. I joined every academic club, played varsity baseball even though I hated it, maintained a 4.0 GPA, and still heard Princeton rejected you because you didn't push yourself enough when the college letters came. Getting accepted to Northwestern with a partial scholarship felt like my first real victory. It meant freedom, 18 miles of physical distance from my family home that somehow felt like 18,000. Those 4 years were transformative. I made real friends who valued me for my personality, not my achievements. I explored interests my father had deemed impractical. I learned what it felt like to breathe without someone measuring the oxygen content of each exhale. Then reality struck in the form of $63,000 in student debt and a recession-impacted job market. Moving back home after graduation was one of the hardest decisions I'd ever made. What was supposed to be just 3 months turned into 2 years of stifled independence, renewed criticism, and increasingly uncomfortable financial entanglements. "Dalton, since you're living here rent-free, co-signing Melissa's car loan is the least you can do." This became the first of many financial hooks my family embedded in me. My credit score was excellent. I'd been obsessive about building it during college, knowing it was my ticket to eventual independence. Soon my name was on a home equity loan for renovations, a personal loan for my father's back surgery that insurance wouldn't fully cover, and as guarantor on the apartment Melissa moved into after dropping out of community college. When I finally landed my position at Mitchell & Reed 3 years ago, I thought things would change. I found an apartment, established boundaries around my time. "No, I can't come over at 11 p.m. to fix your computer," and started saying no to new financial requests. Each refusal was met with escalating emotional warfare. Guilt trips from my mother, angry tirades from my father, tearful accusations from Melissa. My recent promotion to senior analyst came with a significant salary increase. Somehow my family knew about it before I'd even received my first new paycheck. The requests started immediately. Money for Melissa's latest entrepreneurial venture, selling customized phone cases. a loan for my parents' 25th anniversary vacation, co-signing yet another refinance on their perpetually underwater mortgage. For the first time, I said no to everything. The temperature in our already frosty relationship dropped to sub-zero. The cracks in our family facade started widening last Thanksgiving. I'd brought a bottle of wine that cost more than $20, a small luxury to celebrate my promotion. My father took one sip and launched into a lecture about putting on airs and forgetting where you came from. When I mentioned I was considering buying a condo, my mother interjected with, "I hope you're not planning to move farther away. You already barely visit as it is." The truth was, I visited every Sunday, without fail, sitting through 3-hour dinners filled with critique and comparison. Each visit left me emotionally drained for days afterward. I'd started seeing a therapist, Dr. Lauren Mitchell, no relation to my firm, who helped me recognize these interactions as emotional manipulation. She encouraged me to establish healthier boundaries, advice that proved impossible to implement without conflict. When I started declining midweek dinner invitations to focus on work, or honestly to preserve my sanity, the guilt offensive began. My mother called daily with medical concerns that mysteriously resolved before I could suggest actual doctor visits. My father sent texts questioning my family loyalty. Melissa showed up unannounced at my apartment, usually when she needed money or a signature on something. The real breaking point came at Easter dinner 2 months ago. Melissa announced she wanted to open a boutique selling locally sourced crafts and needed just $20,000 to secure a lease in an up-and-coming neighborhood. All eyes turned to me expectantly. "I'm not in a position to invest that kind of money right now," I said carefully, keeping my voice neutral. "Invest? Who said anything about investing? We're talking about helping your sister." My father responded, his knuckles whitening around his fork. "I'd pay you back, obviously," Melissa added with an eye roll that suggested the opposite. "I've looked over her business plan," I tried explaining, "and the numbers don't add up. The market research is minimal. There's no clear—" "Oh, listen to Mr. Financial Analyst," my father interrupted. "Too good for honest work now, aren't you? Sitting in your fancy office judging real entrepreneurs." The argument escalated from there. My mother cried. Melissa stormed out. My father pointed his finger an inch from my face and said words I'll never forget. "Everything you have is because of this family. Don't you ever forget that." I left early, ignoring the barrage of texts that followed. For the first time, I didn't apologize for the misunderstanding. I didn't smooth things over to keep the peace. I simply didn't respond. The weeks that followed brought escalating pressure tactics. My mother left tearful voicemails about how I was killing her with worry. My father alternated between icy silence and explosive phone calls. Melissa weaponized our extended family, telling cousins and aunts I'd abandoned her in her time of need. Suddenly, relatives I hadn't spoken to in years were messaging me about family obligations. Meanwhile, I discovered my parents had attempted to use my information to secure a personal loan without my knowledge. The bank called to verify details on an application I'd never submitted. When confronted, my mother dismissed it as a misunderstanding, and my father accused me of making mountains out of molehills. I consulted with a lawyer friend about protecting my identity and financial information. He advised me to check my credit report regularly and place fraud alerts with the major bureaus. When my family discovered I'd frozen my credit, preventing any new loans from being taken out in my name, the temperature dropped even further. Each Sunday dinner became more strained than the last. Conversation was superficial when not outright hostile. My father made pointed comments about ungrateful children, while my mother sighed dramatically and refilled wine glasses. Melissa bounced between ignoring me completely and making passive-aggressive comments about friends whose supportive brothers had helped them achieve their dreams. I stopped sharing details about my life or work. Each disclosure had become ammunition to be used against me later. When I mentioned a potential work trip to New York, my father immediately asked if I'd be expense accounting it so I could throw some money the family's way. When I talked about a colleague's wedding I'd attended, my mother interrogated me about why I never brought nice girls home anymore, conveniently forgetting how she'd treated my college girlfriend. The Sunday before the text, I'd declined dinner altogether, citing a work project that needed urgent attention. In reality, I was emotionally exhausted and needed one weekend to recover. The barrage of messages that followed ranged from guilt-inducing "Dad, made your favorite roast for nothing" to outright accusatory. "You clearly think you're too good for this family now." I didn't know it then, but I was on the precipice of the biggest family explosion of my life. Tuesday started like any other workday. My alarm went off at 6:15. I hit the gym in my building for a quick 30-minute workout, showered, and grabbed my usual coffee and bagel from the corner deli. The morning commute on the L train was crowded but uneventful. I reviewed presentation notes on my tablet, mentally preparing for a client meeting that afternoon with Westbrook Investments, a potential $2 million account our firm had been courting for months. The morning flew by, in a flurry of spreadsheets, projection models, and conference calls. By noon, I was feeling confident about the Westbrook presentation. I decided to use my lunch break to catch up on emails and fine-tune some details. The office cafeteria was relatively quiet, with most colleagues either out for lunch meetings or eating at their desks. I was halfway through a turkey sandwich, eyes on my laptop screen, when my phone buzzed with a text notification. Assuming it was my colleague James checking in about the presentation, I glanced down casually. The name Dad appeared on my screen, sending an involuntary tensing through my shoulders, a Pavlovian response to years of criticism. "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away from us forever." I blinked, certain I'd misread. I put down my sandwich and picked up the phone, reading the message again and again. My brain struggled to process the words on the screen. Below the message, I noticed the small heart reaction. Melissa had liked the text. The cafeteria continued its normal hum of conversation around me, but everything seemed suddenly distant, as though I was underwater. My hands grew clammy, heart hammering against my ribs. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead as I stared at those 11 words that somehow erased 28 years of family history. No context, no explanation. Just a unilateral decision delivered via text message during my lunch break on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday. In that moment of shock, my financial analyst brain took over, calculating the practical implications before my emotions could fully engage. Every loan, every financial entanglement, every legally binding document with my name next to theirs flashed through my mind. Without conscious thought, my fingers typed, "I'll remove my name from every loan tomorrow." I pressed send and immediately felt a wave of nausea. I closed my eyes, trying to regulate my breathing as Dr. Mitchell had taught me. In 4 counts. Hold 7 counts. Out 8 counts. By the time I opened my eyes, my phone was lighting up with notifications. "My father, you ungrateful piece of garbage. After everything we've done for you." "My mother, Dalton. How could you say such a horrible thing to your father? You know his blood pressure." "Melissa. Wow. Showing your true colors finally." The messages kept coming, each more vitriolic than the last. Threats, guilt, accusations, the family communication playbook deployed at maximum intensity. The dissonance was staggering. They had just told me to stay away forever, but my threat to disentangle financially had somehow crossed an unforgivable line. "Dalton, we're up in 5. I looked up to see James standing beside my table, presentation materials in hand, brow furrowed with concern. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "Yeah, I'm fine," I lied, quickly gathering my things. "Just some family stuff. Nothing important." Somehow I made it through the Westbrook presentation on autopilot. Years of preparation and professionalism carried me through the slides, the questions, the handshakes. Inside, I was unraveling my phone, vibrating continuously in my pocket, with the ongoing family meltdown. Back at my desk afterward, I finally scrolled through the messages. 47 texts in the family group chat, ranging from my father's all-caps rage, to my mother's emotional manipulation, to Melissa's increasingly personal attacks. References to my abandonment of the family, my selfishness, my betrayal. Not once did anyone acknowledge the original message telling me to stay away forever. My desk phone rang, the reception desk. "Mr. Campbell, there's a Richard Campbell here to see you. He says it's urgent." My father had driven downtown in rush-hour traffic to confront me at my workplace. The thought of facing him in my professional environment with colleagues and clients nearby sent panic coursing through me. "Please tell him I'm in a meeting and can't be disturbed." I managed to say, my voice surprisingly steady. 5 minutes later, my phone rang again. "Sir, he's becoming rather insistent. Security is asking if they should escort him out." The image of my father being removed by security guards was simultaneously terrifying and strangely satisfying. "I'll come down," I said, not wanting to create a scene that would inevitably reflect poorly on me professionally. In the lobby, my father stood red-faced by the reception desk, his construction management clothes, khakis, and a polo with his company logo, conspicuously casual among the suits and ties. "What the hell do you think you're playing at?" he demanded before I'd even reached him, voice echoing across the marble floor. "Let's talk outside," I said, quietly painfully aware of the receptionist's widened eyes. On the sidewalk safely away from my workplace entrance, my father unleashed the full force of his anger. How dare I threaten the family's financial security? How I'd always been selfish and ungrateful. How this temper tantrum would destroy my mother. On and on, a greatest hits compilation of emotional manipulation. "Dad, I finally interrupted you. Literally texted me to stay away forever. What did you expect?" He looked momentarily confused, then dismissive. "That was about Sunday dinner. You've been so difficult lately, we decided it wasn't worth the stress." The casual rewriting of reality left me speechless. That's not what the message said. "Don't be so dramatic. This is exactly your problem, always making everything about you." As he continued his tirade, my phone buzzed with a new notification. A public Facebook post from Melissa. "When your own brother threatens to destroy your parents financially because he's mad about being called out on his selfishness. Some people never grow up." Already comments were accumulating. Sympathetic responses from extended family friends from high school I hadn't spoken to in years, even my mother's church group members. The public smearing had begun. The drive home from work that evening remains a blur in my memory. Traffic crawled along the Kennedy Expressway, while my mind raced through 28 years of family history, re-examining every interaction through this new lens. Had I always been merely a financial resource to them? Had any of the love been real, or was it conditional all along? The questions circled like vultures, picking at my sense of self. I made it as far as my apartment building's underground parking garage before the emotional dam broke. Sitting in my car engine off, I finally allowed the tears to come. Great heaving sobs that left me gasping for breath, hands gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. I cried for the little boy who had tried so hard to earn his father's approval. I cried for the young man who had signed away his financial independence to help the people who should have been protecting him. Mostly I cried for the present-day Dalton, who had somehow become the villain in his own family story. When the worst of the storm passed, I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would understand without judgment. "Marcus, I need to talk. It's bad." Marcus had been my roommate sophomore year at Northwestern, and despite our different career paths, he went into software development while I pursued finance. We'd remained close. He knew my family dynamic better than anyone, having witnessed it firsthand during several disastrous campus visits from my parents. "I'm ordering pizza and coming over," he said without hesitation. 30 minutes. True to his word, Marcus arrived at my door with food, beer, and the kind of solid presence that made the apartment feel less empty. I showed him the original text, the explosion that followed, and my father's bizarre appearance at my workplace. "Dude," he said after absorbing it all, "this is next-level toxic." Am I crazy? I asked the question that had been haunting me. Am I the one in the wrong here? "Absolutely not," Marcus said firmly. "They told you to stay away forever, then lost their minds when you took them at their word. That's gaslighting 101. We spent hours analyzing the day's events, with Marcus patiently talking me through each emotional landmine. When my phone continued lighting up with notifications, more family messages, social media alerts, even emails from extended family members who'd somehow gotten involved, he suggested I turn it off completely for the night. "Tomorrow's soon enough to deal with the fallout," he advised. "Right now you need rest." But rest proved elusive. After Marcus left, I lay awake until 3 in the morning, replaying family memories like an investigator searching for clues I'd missed. The fishing trip when I was 8 and caught my first base, my father's rare smile of approval. My high school graduation when my mother hugged me and whispered she was proud. helping Melissa with her science fair project the year she won first place. Had those moments been real, or was I romanticizing a family that never truly existed? Morning brought no clarity, only exhaustion and a throbbing headache. I called in sick for the first time in 3 years, unable to face the professional mask required at the office. Instead, I spent the day methodically documenting every financial connection between myself and my family members. The list was longer than I'd realized. Co-signer on my parents' home equity loan, $35,000 remaining. Guarantor on Melissa's apartment lease, 17 months remaining. Joint holder on a family credit card, $8,000 balance. Co-signer on Melissa's car loan, $12,000 remaining. Personal loan to my father for medical expenses, $7,000 to be repaid when possible. My name on various utility accounts at my parents' house from when I lived there. The financial entanglement was extensive, deliberately so. I realized with growing clarity that each obligation had been presented as temporary as helping family in need, but collectively they formed golden handcuffs keeping me bound to my family's control. My phone, which I'd finally turned back on, continued its steady stream of notifications. My father had called my direct supervisor claiming a family emergency and asking inappropriate questions about my work schedule and salary details. My mother had left 7 voicemails, each more tearful than the last, about how I was killing her with worry. Melissa's social media campaign had expanded to Instagram, where she posted a childhood photo of us with a long caption about family betrayal that generated dozens of sympathetic comments. Most disturbing were the messages from extended family and family friends, people who had only heard one carefully curated version of events. My father's brother sent a particularly scathing email about my responsibility to honor thy father and mother. My mother's best friend from church called to talk some sense into me. Even my former high school baseball coach texted to express disappointment in the man I'd become. The isolation was crushing. My version of events, the years of financial manipulation, the original text telling me to stay away, was being systematically erased from the narrative. In its place, a story about an ungrateful son threatening elderly parents over a minor disagreement was being constructed and broadcast to everyone who might listen. By evening, my emotional exhaustion had transformed into something else, a cold, clear anger that felt strangely steadying. For the first time, I saw with perfect clarity the patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades: the love bombing followed by criticism, the financial hooks disguised as help, the public image maintenance at all costs. Dr. Mitchell had often talked about rock bottom being the foundation upon which new structures could be built. Sitting alone in my apartment, surrounded by financial documents and unanswered messages, I realized I had reached that foundation. There was nowhere to go but up. The knock came at 7:15 on Saturday morning, 3 sharp raps that echoed through my quiet apartment like gunshots. I'd been awake for hours, already reviewing emails from financial institutions about the process of removing myself as co-signer on various loans. Through the peephole, I saw my mother's carefully styled hair and Melissa's impatient shifting from foot to foot. For a moment, I considered not answering. Then, squaring my shoulders, I opened the door. "Oh, thank God," my mother exclaimed, pushing past me into the apartment. "We've been worried sick." Melissa followed, giving the space a dismissive once-over. "Nice place," she said in a tone that suggested the opposite. They hadn't called ahead, hadn't texted to see if I was available. The intrusion was deliberate, a power move designed to catch me off guard in my own space. I closed the door slowly, gathering my thoughts. "What are you doing here?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. My mother's eyes immediately welled with tears. "Is that any way to greet your family, after everything we've been through this week?" "You told me to stay away forever," I reminded her, "and now you're in my living room at 7 in the morning on Saturday." "Don't be so literal," Dalton Melissa snapped. "God, you always take everything so personally." My mother settled onto my couch without invitation, purse clutched in her lap like armor. "Your father is beside himself. He hasn't slept in days." "Because of the text he sent, or because of my response?" I asked. "Both, I suppose," she sighed dramatically. "You know how he gets when he's upset. He says things he doesn't mean." I remained standing, unwilling to be physically positioned beneath them, and the part about severing all contact, staying away forever. Did he mean that? Well, you've been so distant lately, my mother hedged. Constantly canceling plans, always too busy for family. What were we supposed to think? The revision of reality was dizzying. In their version, my father's text was a reasonable response to my behavior, not the catalyst for the entire conflict. I felt the familiar pull to apologize, to smooth things over, to accept their version, to keep the peace. The words nearly formed on my tongue before I caught myself. "Why are you really here?" I asked instead. Melissa exchanged a glance with my mother. "We need to discuss the loans," she said bluntly. And there it was, the real purpose behind the early morning ambush. Not concern for my well-being, not a desire to repair family bonds, but panic over finances. I've started the process to remove myself as co-signer, I confirmed. The banks have been very helpful. My mother's hand flew to her chest. "You can't be serious. After all we've done for you." "What exactly have you done for me?" The question came out before I could censor it, the first time I'd ever directly challenged the family narrative of parental sacrifice. "We raised you," my mother exclaimed, genuinely shocked. "We put a roof over your head. We fed and clothed you." "That's the legal minimum required of parents," I pointed out, "not some extraordinary gift." Melissa's face flushed with anger. "You've always been the spoiled one, always got the best of everything while I had to make do with second-hand." The alternate reality they inhabited never ceased to amaze me. "I worked through high school to pay for my own clothes," I reminded her. "You got a car for your 16th birthday. I took the bus until college." "Here we go again." Melissa rolled her eyes. Poor Dalton, always the victim. My phone rang. My father's distinctive ringtone. My mother snatched it up before I could react, answering and putting it on speaker. "Richard, we're here with him now," she said. Put that ungrateful son of a bitch on. My father's voice filled the apartment, strained with barely contained rage. "You're on speaker, Dad," I said evenly. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" he demanded. "The bank called me yesterday about removing your name from our home equity loan." "I'm doing exactly what I said I would do," I replied. "Removing my name from every loan." "You'll destroy this family," he shouted. "Is that what you want?" The irony was almost laughable. "You literally told me I'm not part of this family anymore. Remember, stay away forever," were your exact words. "That was different," he blustered. "I was upset about you missing Sunday dinner." "For the third time, that's not what you said," I insisted. "And if removing my name from loans I never should have been on in the first place destroys the family, maybe the family was built on a pretty shaky foundation." My mother began to sob. The theatrical, attention-commanding cries I'd witnessed my entire life when discussions weren't going her way. Melissa put an arm around her shoulders, glaring at me as though I'd physically struck her. "Your mother is having heart palpitations because of you," my father's voice accused. "Are you happy now?" It was the same script they'd run my entire life. Express displeasure, attack when challenged, then position themselves as victims when held accountable. For the first time I could see the manipulation for what it was. "Mom, if you're having chest pain, I'm happy to call an ambulance," I said calmly. Her sobs immediately moderated. No, I'll be fine," she sniffed. "I just need my son back." "I never left," I pointed out. "You told me to stay away." "We didn't mean it literally," Melissa exploded. "God, why are you being such a jerk about this?" "Tell him about the business loan," my father interjected. Melissa shot a warning look at the phone. "Dad, not now." "Tell him," my father insisted. "He's already screwing us over, might as well put all the cards on the table." My mother straightened, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes. "We've been approved for a business loan for Melissa's boutique," she explained, voice suddenly businesslike. "But we need one more co-signer with excellent credit." The pieces clicked into place with nauseating clarity. The text wasn't about Sunday dinner or family disagreements at all. It had been a calculated attempt to punish me for refusing the previous loan request, a guilt trip designed to bring me back in line. When I'd responded by threatening their financial security, instead panic had set in. "No," I said simply. "You haven't even heard the terms," my mother protested. It's very favorable, and Melissa's business plan, the same business plan I already reviewed and found fundamentally flawed, I interrupted. With no market research, unrealistic revenue projections, and no contingency planning, there's been some adjustments, Melissa said vaguely. Let me guess. The loan amount has increased. Their silence confirmed my suspicion. How much I pressed. 50,000, my father finally answered. The location we want has higher potential. The number hit me like a physical blow. They had come to my apartment expecting me to co-sign for $50,000 after telling me to stay away forever days earlier. The audacity was breathtaking. This is why you're here, I said, the realization settling cold and heavy in my stomach. Not because you care about our relationship, not because you want reconciliation. You need my signature on a loan document. Family helps family, my mother insisted. That's what we do. Except when family sets boundaries, apparently. Then they get told to stay away forever. You're twisting everything, Melissa shouted, standing up. You've always been so selfish, Dalton. Always thinking about yourself first. If I'd been thinking about myself first, I never would have co-signed any of these loans to begin with, I replied. My father's voice cut through the tension. Listen to me very carefully. If you go through with removing your name from our loans, you will destroy your mother's credit rating, force your sister out of her apartment, and possibly cause us to lose our home. Is that what you want on your conscience? The question was designed to trigger maximum guilt, another familiar tactic. But something had shifted inside me. The fog of obligation and emotional manipulation had lifted. What I want, I said clearly, is to be treated with basic respect. What I want is acknowledgement that I'm an adult who can make my own financial decisions. What I want is a family who values me for who I am, not what I can provide financially. So dramatic, Melissa scoffed. Always have to make everything about your feelings. Yes, I agreed, surprising her. My feelings do matter. So does my financial security. Your security, my father exploded. What about our security? After everything we've sacrificed for you? Name one thing, I challenged. Name one significant sacrifice you've made for my benefit that wasn't legally required of you as parents. The silence stretched, broken only by my mother's renewed theatrical sniffling. That's what I thought, I said quietly. My mother rose from the couch, gathering her purse with trembling hands. I don't even recognize you anymore, she whispered. My son would never treat his family this way. Your son grew up, I replied, and realized he deserves better than emotional blackmail disguised as family love. You have 24 hours to change your mind, my father's voice declared from the phone. After that, don't expect any forgiveness when you come crawling back. I won't be crawling anywhere, I said, opening my apartment door. And I won't be changing my mind. Melissa stormed past me, pausing in the hallway to deliver a final blow. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you've done. Everyone. My mother followed more slowly, playing the wounded matriarch to the end. When you're all alone with no one who loves you, remember this was your choice. As they disappeared down the hallway, my father still raging tinny and small through the phone's speaker, I felt a curious lightness. I ended the call mid-tirade and closed my door, leaning against it in the sudden silence of my apartment. For the first time in my adult life, I had chosen myself over family obligation and survived. The world hadn't ended. I hadn't disintegrated from guilt. Instead, I felt something unfamiliar, taking root in my chest, the solid foundation of self-respect. Monday morning, I walked into Grayson Financial Advisors with a folder of documents and a determination I'd never felt before. Catherine Grayson, a no-nonsense certified financial planner with 20 years of experience, had come highly recommended by a colleague. So she said, after reviewing my situation, you want to disentangle yourself from approximately $72,000 in loans and financial obligations that aren't yours. Correct. Hearing the total sum spoken aloud made my stomach clench, but I nodded. Yes, as quickly and cleanly as possible. Catherine didn't ask for the emotional backstory for which I was grateful. She simply laid out options, consequences, and timelines with clinical precision. Some loans could be refinanced by the primary borrowers if their credit allowed. Others might require full payment to remove my name. Utility accounts were straightforward to transfer. The apartment lease would be trickier but not impossible. This won't be painless, she warned, but it's entirely doable. I've seen far worse financial entanglements. From Catherine's office, I went directly to meet with Robert Halsey, an attorney specializing in family law and financial issues. Where Catherine had been all business, Robert's approach was more personable, encouraging me to share the context behind my decision. Financial abuse within families is far more common than people realize, he told me after I'd outlined the situation, especially when it's disguised as helping or obligation. Robert drafted formal letters to each financial institution, recommended additional credit monitoring services, and suggested documenting all communication with my family moving forward. If things escalate, he cautioned, you'll want a clear record of events. The practical actions felt empowering after days of emotional turmoil. Each signature, each email sent, each account modification was a small reclamation of my independence. By Wednesday, the process was fully in motion. My name had been removed from the utility accounts immediately. The credit card company had frozen the joint account and issued formal notification to all parties. The banks had initiated reviews of the loan cosigner removal requests. My father's response was as swift as it was predictable. The threatening voicemail came Wednesday night. You have no idea what you've started. I built you, and I can destroy you just as easily. Your job, your reputation, everything you think is yours. It can all disappear overnight. Following Robert's advice, I saved the message without responding and documented it in the growing file of family communications. The next morning, I contacted my building's management company to request security camera installation at my apartment door, an expense that seemed justified when I found my car keyed in the parking garage that evening. The word "traitor" scratched deeply across the driver's side door. The police officer who took the report was sympathetically professional. Family disputes can get ugly, he observed, taking photos of the damage. You might want to consider a restraining order if this escalates. Melissa's social media campaign continued gaining momentum, with daily posts about family betrayal and vague references to financial abandonment. She never named me directly, careful enough to avoid potential defamation, but shared enough childhood photos and thinly veiled references that anyone who knew us understood exactly who she meant. Former high school classmates, distant relatives, and family friends left hundreds of supportive comments, most condemning my alleged behavior, without knowing any details. The digital pile-on was painful, but clarifying. Many of these people had witnessed my family dynamic growing up, but had accepted the carefully curated public image my parents had maintained. None had ever seen the controlling behavior behind closed doors, the financial manipulation disguised as generosity, the constant emotional blackmail. Their willingness to condemn me without facts spoke volumes about the effectiveness of my family's image management. What surprised me most was the support that emerged from unexpected quarters. My direct supervisor at Mitchell & Reed called me into his office Thursday afternoon, and I braced for professional fallout from my father's calls. "Dalton," he said gravely, "I want you to know that we value your work here. Whatever's happening in your personal life, it won't affect your position with us." Relief flooded through me. "Thank you. I appreciate that more than you know." Family stuff can be complicated. He continued, looking uncomfortable but determined. My own father was challenging. "If you need to take some personal days, just let me know." That brief acknowledgement of understanding meant more than any elaborate expression of support could have. Other small kindnesses followed. James and other colleagues formed a protective buffer during lunch breaks. The building security team began escorting me to my car each evening. My neighbor, a retired teacher named Judith, who I'd barely spoken to before, left a homemade lasagna at my door with a note saying simply, "Tough times require good food." Most surprisingly, my father's sister, Aunt Patricia, reached out via email. We'd lost touch years ago after she'd had her own falling out with my father. Her message was simple but powerful. "Dalton, I heard through the family grapevine about what's happening. I've been there. Call me if you want to talk to someone who understands exactly what you're going through." Our subsequent phone conversation lasted 3 hours, filling in family history gaps I'd never known. How my father had financially manipulated their parents before their deaths. How he'd tried the same tactics with Patricia until she'd cut ties completely 15 years ago. The patterns extended further back than I'd realized, generational cycles of control, disguised as family obligation. The guilt fades, she assured me. The freedom is worth it. As the financial separation progressed, I began seeing Dr. Mitchell twice weekly to navigate the emotional aftermath. She introduced me to resources about family estrangement, support groups for adult children of emotionally manipulative parents, and techniques for processing the complex grief of losing family relationships while the family members were still living. "You're mourning the family you thought you had," she explained, "and the family you wished you had. That's a complicated grief many people never fully understand." Marcus remained a steadfast presence, checking in daily and providing normal social interaction when everything else felt chaotic. He also introduced me to his friend Audrey, whose own experience with family estrangement gave her a unique understanding of my situation. "The first 6 months are the hardest," she told me over coffee. "You question everything. Your memories, your judgment, whether you're the crazy one. Then one day you wake up and realize you're breathing easier. The knot in your stomach is a little looser. You laugh at something and don't immediately feel guilty for experiencing joy." Her words offered a glimpse of a possible future I desperately needed to believe in. 4 weeks after my father's initial text, I received formal notification that my name had been successfully removed from all joint accounts and loans. My parents had been forced to refinance their home equity loan at a higher interest rate. Melissa had found a roommate to take over her apartment lease and had moved back in with our parents. The family credit card had been closed entirely. The practical disentanglement was complete, but the emotional aftermath continued. My mother still left voicemails cycling between guilt-inducing pleas and vicious accusations. My father's threats had evolved into ominous silence. Melissa's social media campaign had expanded to include a family healing fundraiser for her boutique dreams, effectively monetizing the conflict. Through it all, I maintained the boundaries Dr. Mitchell and I had established. No direct engagement, documentation of all communication, focus on building new connections rather than repairing broken ones. Each day brought small victories in reclaiming my sense of self separate from my family's expectations and definitions. Healing isn't linear. Dr. Mitchell reminded me during a particularly difficult session after I'd received a holiday card from my mother containing nothing but family photos with my image cut out. There will be setbacks and difficult days. The important thing is the overall trajectory. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, that trajectory began pointing upward. 6 months after receiving that text from my father, I stood in the empty living room of my new apartment, 15 miles from my old place, and in a neighborhood my family had never visited. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, illuminating freshly painted walls and the few pieces of furniture I'd kept from my previous life. Everything else, from the kitchen utensils to the bedding, was new, carefully chosen to reflect my preferences rather than whatever had been on sale or handed down from family members. The physical relocation was the final step in a transformation that had begun with that fateful text message. My life had been completely restructured, from my living space to my daily routines to my understanding of what family truly meant. Professionally, the past 6 months had brought unexpected growth. Without the constant drain of family drama, my focus and creativity at work had sharpened considerably. The Westbrook account had been secured, followed by 3 other major clients. 2 months ago, I'd been promoted to team leader with a significant salary increase and greater responsibilities. "Your confidence has completely transformed," my supervisor commented during my performance review. "Whatever personal challenges you were working through clearly led to professional growth." He couldn't know how accurate that assessment was. The skills I'd developed in setting boundaries, communicating clearly, and standing firm in my convictions had translated directly into leadership capabilities I hadn't known I possessed. My personal growth had been equally profound. The panic attacks that once characterized Sunday evenings, anticipation of family dinner, had disappeared. The constant background anxiety, like static on a radio station I couldn't turn off, had gradually faded to silence. In its place grew a calm self-assurance I'd never experienced before. My phone still occasionally lit up with family contact attempts. My mother had settled into a pattern of monthly, emotionally manipulative emails, each one constructed to maximize guilt while maintaining her role as the wounded matriarch. My father hadn't contacted me directly since the last threatening voicemail 4 months ago, though I'd heard through Aunt Patricia that he periodically announced to extended family his intention to never speak to his ungrateful son again. Melissa's approach had evolved with calculated precision. After her social media campaign had stopped generating sufficient attention, she'd pivoted to portraying herself as the compassionate peacemaker. Her most recent message had been a carefully worded invitation to begin healing our family wounds, sent coincidentally just after she'd been denied another business loan without a co-signer. Each contact attempt had become easier to recognize for what it was: not genuine connection, but hooks designed to pull me back into old patterns. I maintained my policy of non-engagement, documenting each communication in a folder that grew thinner with each passing month. Meanwhile, my actual support network had flourished. Weekly dinners with Marcus had become a tradition, often including his boyfriend Tyler and a rotating group of friends. Audrey and I had developed a close friendship built on shared experience and mutual understanding. My relationship with Aunt Patricia had deepened, filling in missing pieces of family history while creating new traditions untainted by manipulation. Most importantly, I'd begun building what Dr. Mitchell called a chosen family, connections based on mutual respect and genuine care rather than biological obligation or financial entanglement. These relationships operated by entirely different rules than my family of origin had taught me. Disagreements could occur without threats of abandonment. Boundaries were respected rather than attacked. Love was expressed through actions, not just convenient words. My therapy sessions with Dr. Mitchell had decreased to bi-weekly, focusing less on crisis management and more on long-term healing. In our most recent session, she'd asked a question that gave me pause. If your family contacted you tomorrow with genuine acknowledgement and apology, what would you want from the relationship moving forward? The question had sent me deep into reflection. 6 months ago, I would have desperately wanted reconciliation at almost any cost. Now I recognized that genuine change would require something my family seemed fundamentally incapable of providing: accountability. I'd need acknowledgement of the manipulation, I told her. Not just apology for specific incidents, but recognition of the patterns. And I'd need completely different boundaries: financial separation, respect for my autonomy, no more emotional blackmail. And if they can't provide that, she asked gently, then I continue on the path I've chosen, I said, surprised by the peace I felt with that answer. I've learned that family isn't defined by blood or obligation. It's defined by mutual respect, support, and healthy love. That realization, that I could create meaning and connection without sacrificing my well-being to toxic family dynamics, had been the most profound gift of this painful journey. Standing in my new apartment, unpacking boxes of carefully chosen items that represented the life I was building for myself, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Not for the text that had started this journey, the cruelty still stung when I allowed myself to remember it, but for the strength I'd found in responding to it. For the first time in my life, I had acted in alignment with my own values, rather than reactive fear or obligation. I placed a framed photo on my new bookshelf. Not a family portrait, but a picture from last month's weekend trip to Lake Michigan, with Marcus, Tyler, Audrey, and other friends. Laughing faces, genuine smiles, the sunlight catching the water behind us. This was my family now, chosen, deliberately maintained with care, connected by love rather than obligation. The journey hadn't been easy, and it wasn't completely over. There would be difficult holidays ahead, awkward conversations with acquaintances who didn't understand family estrangement, and undoubtedly more attempts at manipulation from my family of origin. But I had developed the tools to navigate those challenges without losing myself in the process. My father's text, "We've chosen to sever all contact. Stay away from us forever," had been intended as punishment for my growing independence. Instead, it had become the catalyst for true freedom. In trying to control me through rejection, my family had inadvertently released me from the chains of toxic obligation that had bound me for 28 years. If you're watching this and something in my story resonates with your own experience, please know that you're not alone. Family relationships should uplift and support you, not drain and control you. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and ultimately for them, is to establish boundaries that protect your well-being. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story helped you feel less alone, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life stories about finding strength in challenging situations. Thank you for listening to my journey. And remember, the family you choose can be more healing than the family you were born into.